Jayam Swasaram Shukribrajagacharya Siddhara Sadasyaman Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai Prem se Gaur Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki Jai Sri Radha Krishna Gaur Gopinath Sam Kund Radha Kund Giridharan ki Jai Vrindavan Dham ki Jai Navadvip Dham ki Jai Swami to Bhaktivinoda ki Jai Ganga Mai ki Jai Jamuna Mai ki Jai Tulasi Devi ki Jai Bhakti Devi ki Jai Swami to Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Shri JANMASTAMI, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to you, all glories to Shri Prabhupada, all glories to Gurudev.
Hare Krishna.
We're so blessed to have your association today, and we welcome you to Hare Krishna Africa.
Okay, thank you for the welcome.
Yes. My name is Sahadev Das.
Sahadev, okay.
And I'm here with my god brother Salika Prabhu. He will also be sharing with the hosting.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we are in the Kali Yuga. It is said that when the student is ready, the master appears or the teacher appears. Here, the teacher is here and the students are not here. But we're going to put the rest on the screen and you may begin. The devotees will be joining shortly.
Okay. All right then.
Okay.
Thank you, Guru.
There are some devotees who also prefer to chant Jai Radha Madhava, or they want to chant whatever before they start the class. And that is up to you. Even though Srila Prabhupada has chanted the Jai Radha Madhava, but if you want to chant it, you may also do that. Whatever you want to do is, the ball is in your court. You give it Bhagavatam like just in a temple setting.
Okay. Well, my experience with giving Bhagavatam classes online is that it's difficult to have coordinated like singing, responsive singing. It's difficult, so
it is.
That's probably why you opt for Prabhupada.
Yes.
Doing it.
Exactly.
And, I have a lot of material I'm hoping to cover tonight, so you're going to crunch the time factor a little bit too.
Okay. So I understand you are in Mayapur, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Okay. So we also conscious and cautious of the time. So without much ado, I think we'll put the rest on the screen and we may begin.
Okay, great.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Guru.
Hare Krishna.
It's small. Okay, let's see. All right, so I'll just start. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vishasya Nashtam Strinpadan Tapasocham Ayamiti Pratisanda Daha Pratisanda Da Ashvashya Mahimcha Samvardayat. So I'll do the word for word. Vishasya, of the bull, the personality of religion. Nashtan, lost. Trin, tree. Padan, legs. Tapa, austerity. Socham, cleanliness. Dayam, mercy. Iti, thus. Pratisandaya, re-established. Ashvasya, by encouraging activities. Mahim, the earth. Cha, and. samavardayat, perfectly improved. Thereafter, the king reestablished the lost legs of the personality of religion, the bull, and by encouraging activities, he sufficiently improved the condition of the earth. Purport. By designating particular places for the personality of Kali, Maharaj Parikshit practically cheated Kali. In the presence of Kali, Dharma in the shape of a bull, and the earth in the shape of a cow, he could actually estimate the general condition of his kingdom. And therefore, he at once took proper steps to reestablish the legs of the bull, namely austerity, cleanliness, and mercy. And for the general benefit of the people of the world, he saw that the gold stock might be employed for stabilization. Gold is certainly a generator of falsity, intoxication, prostitution, enmity, and violence. But under the guidance of a proper king or public leader, or a brahmana, or a sannyasi, the same gold can be properly utilized to reestablish the lost legs of the bull, the personality of religion. Maharaj Parikshit, therefore, like his grandfather Arjuna, collected all illicit gold kept for propensities of Kali and employed it in the Sankirtan Yajna as per the instruction of the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM. As we have suggested before, one's accumulated wealth may be divided into three parts for distribution, namely 50% for the service of the Lord, 25% for the family members, and 25% for personal necessities. Spending 50% for the service of the Lord or for the propagation of spiritual knowledge in society by way of the Sankirtan Yajna is a maximum display of human mercy. People of the world are generally in darkness regarding spiritual knowledge, especially in regard to the devotional service of the Lord. And therefore, to propagate the systematic transcendental knowledge of devotional service is the greatest mercy that one can show in this world. When everyone is taught to sacrifice 50% of his accumulated gold for the Lord's service, certainly austerity, cleanliness, and mercy automatically ensue. And thus the last three legs of the personality of religion are automatically established. When there is sufficient austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, naturally Mother Earth is completely satisfied, and there's very little chance for Kali to infiltrate the structure of human society. Read the translation again. Therefore, the king reestablished the lost legs of the personality of religion, the bull, and by encouraging activities, he sufficiently improved the condition of the earth. Om Jnana Timarandasha Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umlitam Gena Tarishmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we'll just kind of backtrack a little bit so we're all on the same page of what's been taking place. Going back to text 24, in the age of Satya, truthfulness, your four legs were established. This is a conversation that's taking place between Bhumi, the earth, and the Dharma, the bull. So in Satya Yoga, your four legs were established by the four principles of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. But it appears that 3 of your legs are broken due to rampant irreligion in the form of pride, lust for women, and intoxication. So in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he comments on the 25, the next verse, that pride diminishes austerity, illicit connection with women diminishes cleanliness, intoxication diminishes mercy, and untruth diminishes truth. So then there's a kind of an interesting exchanges that are taking place, you know. So Maharaj Parikshit, he comes to the river Saraswati, and there's this crazy thing going on with this person dressed as a king, and he's beating very savagely this bull and this cow. And you know, he's just like shocked by what's going on. So he feels his duty, because the cow is such a sacred personality, and the bull as well. And the bull is just standing on one leg somehow or other and tolerating the beating. He just can't understand what's going on. So his responsibility as a king, when such outrageous behavior is taking place, is to kill the perpetrator. So he takes his sword out and he's ready to do in this rascal. You know, this is before everything's revealed of who this rascal is. Kali personified, threatens to kill him, and then the you know, he knows that Kali, the Shudra dressed as a king, knows that his end is in sight, so he surrenders. He puts his head, you know, on the ground before Maharaj Parikshit, and so this made Maharaj Parikshit, brought out his compassion, and so then he told them he couldn't live here anymore, you know. So, and that was too much for Kali. So he asked if, you know, for some mercy, so if he could, there's some place that he could reside. So then Maharaj Parikshit allowed him to stay in the places where gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter were performed. And so this was kind of clever on the part of Maharaj Parikshit, because he had every intention of eliminating these places in his kingdom. And Kali, he understood this. So he said, oh, please, I need some mercy. He asked for more, something he was begging him. So then Maharaj Parikshit said that wherever there's gold, gave him permission to stay wherever there's gold. And because where there is gold, these 4 things, you know, are present. The pridefulness, illicit connection with women, intoxication. So anyway, all these bad qualities manifest when there's gold. All right, so this kind of brings us up to, so he gave him that permission, but even with that, he had a plan to utilize this gold in a way that was really appropriate, was Krishna conscious, so that these irreligious you know, aspects wouldn't enter in. So there's an like a lot of times we don't really think along these lines, that, you know, the presence of money brings about all this irreligiosity. There's a very interesting verse from 11th canto. This is in the 23rd chapter. This is the song of the Avanti Brahmana. And the text 18 and 19. These are some of the things that take place because of greed for wealth. There's 15 qualities, or not exactly qualities, undesirable qualities that manifest. Theft, violence, speaking lies, duplicity, lust, anger, perplexity, pride, quarreling, enmity, faithlessness. Enmity, and then envy, the dangers caused by women, gambling, intoxication. So all in the purport, actually, no, this is still in the verse. All these qualities are undesirable. Men falsely ascribe value to them. But one desiring real benefit, in other words, making spiritual advancement, remains aloof from these undesirable material wealth. So this was like the Avanti Brahmana was about to renounce all of this, so he was getting these realizations. And kind of in a lighter tone, there's also an expression by Queen Kunti in her prayers of Queen Kunti in the 8th chapter of the 1st canto. Janmashvaya Shruta Shribir Edamana Madapuman Navardhatya Vidatum Vai Twamakinchana Gocharam. So your lordship can be easily approached by those who are materially exhausted. But those who are on the path of material progress, trying to improve themselves with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, or bodily beauty, they can't approach you with sincere feeling. It's like an intoxication, edamana madapuman, that they undergo with these, this pursuit of material benefits, material pleasure. So then the whole concept of how to deal with gold, how to deal with money, this is a lot of what the verse is dealing with. And now in the first mantra in Ishopanishad, the Ishavasham idam sarvam yat kinja jagatam jagat tena tak tena bunjita madgudham kasha swiddanam. So everything animate and inanimate is owned and controlled by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself that are set aside for his quota, and one should accept other things knowing well to whom they belong. They're Krishna's. So like in a culture where economic development is prioritized, not what's happened. Just people are thinking, well, if I just get more and more wealth, then I'll be happier and happier. But just the opposite takes place. They become more and more disturbed, more and more distressed because they get involved in all kinds of irreligious activities. So what to do? There's in the items of Vaidhi Bhakti, this is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, but it's used by Krishna Das Kaviraj in his presentation, Madhya 22. Krishnarte Akila Chesta. One should perform activities for Krishna. All of his endeavors should be for Krishna's pleasure. And this goes along with the Yukta Vairagya principle. Anashaktasya Vishayan Yartarham Upayunjata Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagya Uchate. So this is when one's not attached to anything, but at the same time uses everything, accepts everything in relationship to Krishna, one's rightly situated above possessiveness. So he uses everything in Krishna's service. So that's the idea. Then the irreligious elements don't enter into our lives, if we're using it all for Krishna. So then in the purport, Prabhupada opens up this whole aspect of 50% for the service of the Lord, 25% for family members, and 25% for personal emergencies or expenditures. And this is a formula that was used by Rupa Goswami when he renounced and went to take shelter of Lord Chaitanya. They had a boat, which was Prabhupada in the preface to Nectar Devotion said was filled. It's also described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, but it was like gold coins, which were worth millions and millions of dollars. Huge boat just filled with coins. And this is what he was going to distribute to the Vaishnavas and Brahmins. And the 25% for emergencies, that was how Sanatana Goswami got out of prison, because after Rupa Goswami left, what was his name? The Muslim emperor Hussein Shah, was it? He was upset, and so he put Sanatana Goswami in jail. Sakar Malik. So that's one time I asked a question. This was at the end of a Bhagavatam class. I moved to Mayapur in 1997. And it probably was like 2 or 3 years after I'd been in Mayapur. And I asked Jananivas at the end of a Bhagavatam class something that he said in class, prompted it. And Jananivas is one of the twin pujaris. Pankajangri Purdue left his body a little over a year ago. And Jananivas said, well, there was a whole discussion on how this would actually be practically implemented and amongst senior devotees. And they all kind of had the conclusion, they came to a conclusion that if that 50% that would be given to the Lord was kind of over and above their very basic expenditures. I mean, there's the example of Kulavechar Sridhar, who was selling plantain leaf cups. That was how he made his living, and he'd always give 50% no matter what for worshiping Ganga Devi. But Chaitanya, like, very much eulogized him for his the deep commitment. But in general, that was what the opinion of, I don't know who all the senior devotees were, but it was, it seemed pretty reasonable. So there are actually examples. Now then Prabhupada, at the last sentence of the first paragraph, he writes, gold is certainly a generator of falsity, intoxication, prostitution, enmity, and violence. But under the guidance of a proper king or public leader, or a Brahmin or sannyasi, the same gold can be properly utilized to establish the lost legs of the bull, the personality of religion. Okay, so I just kind of came to my mind, in thinking about this, of examples within our movement. There's one devotee, his name's Srinathji, and he was a very, very successful businessman. And but he was very dedicated to Srila Prabhupada. And he acquired the land for the Chopati temple, provided a lot of the funds for it. Like 3 years ago, I went to Govardhan Eco Village. This is a kind of a expansion of the Chopati project. And so much of the buildings there, he funded. So he just gave heart and soul, to pushing the movement on. Just exemplarily humble. He would go to the morning program, then he'd go out and do some heavy-duty business transaction. Then he'd come back at night and help with cooking It's just that was his life, just completely dedicated, but gave enormous amount of funds to push on the movement. And another example is Ambarish Prabhu. I'm actually close friends with him and his wife. And, he's put $22 million thus far into the temple, the TLVP. And this Abut Mandir, there's a prediction of Lord Nityananda, going back well over 500 years ago, that this Abut Mandir, this wonderful temple, from it, Krishna consciousness would spread all over the world. And it's already having a huge impact, I'm seeing. Now, just for instance, another point that's made in the gold, if it's used properly by a proper king or public leader, then the lost legs of the bull can be reestablished. So with the construction of the temple recently, the government widened the Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Marg, which is the road that runs from Hulderghat, where you go over by ferry to Navadvip, and goes out to the national highway, past Yoga Pit and Chaitanya Math. And that used to be so narrow, it was like incredible, that nothing could move. Their traffic would be just jammed. I see Krishna Subhadra's name here. He's a Mayapur Basi and Giridhari Puja. I think he spent a lot of time here in Mayapur recently. So now the constructions, the road is about, I think it's about maybe 4 times as wide as it was before. And that's all the government, just recognizing this need. And they also are spending the equivalent of about $2 million to build a bathing ghat at the Ganga, as well as a temple. And it's going to take them 2 years to do. This is all government money. And they're going to build like sewage systems, so that the Ganga doesn't get polluted. And then there'll be a temple that will be built. And 6 months after the construction's completed, it'll be all turned over to ISKCON. So now going back, like in 2011, the Communist Party went out of power, and Mamata Banerjee came in as a chief minister, and she was very favorable to our movement. She would regularly, when they have Rath Yatra in Calcutta, she would come and she would offer artik to Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra, at the beginning of the Rath Yatra parade. And when the communists were in power, I don't know, I had the service, the GBC asked me to start the Mayapur Institute. So I started working on that in 1999, and we launched in Gorkhan in 2000. And I was the director until 2009. So at about 2007-8, the TLVP was under, of course, Ambarish was the main contributor, but there was a management team, and they were going to include in the campaign the development of Mayapur University. It was going to be an expansion of the Mayapur Institute, and they allocated 80 acres of land. And then the communist government, being prompted by the mood of Kali, they moved and they tried to take all but 22 acres of the 700 acres that ISKCON owned away from ISKCON and put it under government control. I mean, it was heavy. And as a matter of fact, the TLVP management team, they were seriously considering building the TLVP in Bhubaneswar because it looked so impossible. And then the communist police forces, they killed, there was some kind of a farmer dispute over land in northern Bengal. And the communist soldiers or police force, they killed about 30 of them, and they lost their vote bank and went out of power. And then Mamata Banerjee came in, and she's like a pious lady. Another thing, there was just recently, gosh, it was a huge, this was also about a $2 million donation the West Bengal government gave. All of the property was signed over legally to ISKCON, and they didn't have to pay any tax on it. And the tax would have been around $2 million. And I may have the figures a little bit, not exact, but it was a lot of money. So it's basically a donation given by the West Bengal government. And they're regularly coming here, like when they have like opening ceremonies or different aspects of the development of the TOVP, the government officials come to Mayapur and participate in the ceremonies. So things are beginning to change. You know, we're entering what is predicted to be the golden age of Krishna consciousness. But there's a long ways to go. You know, I mean, it's there's, I mean, all of you are aware of the irreligiosity that's so prominent in Kali Yuga. It's just like mind blowing. You know, the human trafficking that goes on. There was recently a devotee that was preaching in Paris, and he was just like, God, it's so hard there. You know, there's all these Russian women there that are there as prostitutes, and the government's so unfavorable to religiosity. They're so locked into their atheistic, secular points of view. And, you know, there's so many situations, you know, this whole thing that's going on with Russia, and, you know, there's a war that's taking place there. You know, it's just like, this is what happens in Kali Yuga because people are so sinful. These are their reactions that are coming their way. So how to process this? You know, how to deal with it, because the golden age is beginning. We're seeing, you know, like the changes that have taken place in India since I moved here are mind-blowing. It's just incredible how many more devotees there are. Right now, there's a population in the Mayapur community of 7,500 devotees. When I came here in 97, it was 800. And the number of visitors has changed dramatically as well. And the kind of the modality of the visitors has changed tremendously too. When we first moved here, there'd be a few people coming, and they would look at the Westerners like we were like animals in a zoo. They were so shocked to see these white-skinned dancing elephants, you know, with the shikas, and they just like, it was like such an unusual occurrence. And most of them didn't have japa beads or tilak or wearing dhoti. They were just coming to see what was going on here, like it was a tourist attraction. But now, most of the visitors are wearing tilak. They got japa beads. And, you know, Jayapataka Swami, you know, he's been, you know, a real stalwart in spite of having so many surgeries, you know, liver, kidney replaced. I was teaching Bhakti Shastri in Juhu when the GBC was meeting there, when he had his stroke. You know, I went to see him in the ICU. He was unconscious, and it was a very serious stroke. And the doctors felt that he probably wouldn't live. So he survived that. And then more recently, he had a kidney and liver replaced, transplant surgery. And he had cancer in the brain, had brain surgery, you know, so many surgeries. It's like unbelievable. And Mahavaraha Prabhu, he's been his caretaker through all of this, the brahmachari. I was with him, I was teaching in Delhi, and they came to just spend some time in Delhi. And Mahavaraha said to me that he had never seen Jayapataka Swami at all depressed or kind of feeling sorry for himself for all those physical ailments that he was undergoing. So Kali Yuga, that's what Kali Yuga is like. The suffering's extremely intense here. So this, I'm going to jump to kind of another whole way of seeing Kali Yuga that it's quite interesting. There's a connection, but it's kind of a different mindset. We're going through quite a substantial paradigm shift. I'm going to take us to the 11th canto, 5th chapter of the Bhagavatam. And this is the 32nd verse. It's actually quite a famous verse. Prabhupada would very frequently quote it. Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam Sango Pangashta Parshadam Jagnai Sankitana Prayer Yajanti Hi Sumedasa. In the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Krishna, who's not blackish. Actually, there's different translations. Okay, let's read the one that's here. I'm used to the one from the CC that's quite a little different. That's the one I memorized, but we'll use this one. Let's see, let's open that up a little bit. So in the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead who constantly sings the name of Krishna, Krishna Varnam. That's one who constantly sings the name of Krishna. That's Lord Chaitanya. Although his complexion is not blackish, he's Krishna himself. He's accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions. Now his weapons is his beauty. He's just so attractive, that everyone just is like mesmerized by his like effulgent, beautiful appearance. So there's going up through the verses up to 38. It's quite interesting. Presentation that we're going through in the first canto, describes the negative aspects of Kali Yuga, and kind of as prompting everyone to let's make a change, and that's important. There's no question about it. And there's changes that are taking place. For instance, in America, I remember before my first 14 years in the movement, I was a book distributor. And I had an interesting approach to distributing books. I had Bhagavad Gitas, and maybe a couple would come up. I'd be distributing on the streets of New York or in one of the airports in America. And let's say a couple comes up. I'm in Chicago International Airport. And I say, welcome to O'Hare International. O'Hare. O'Hare International Airport. There's so much book distribution that went on there over the years. And so I'd stick my hand out, welcome to O'Hare International Airport, sir, where are you coming in from? And they'd say, well, we're from New York City. And I'd say, no wonder you look so blissful, kind of joke with them. And they'd start smiling. And then say, we're distributing 500 of these to other travelers coming to the airport today. And I put a Bhagavad Gita in their hands. And then I'd take it back and say, let me put my name in it, and then you can let us know how you like it. Because in America, a lot of Christians, and they start seeing, the BBT plates of Krishna, and they get a little mental about it. So then I say, this book describes how you can. Before I would do that, it's been a while since I distributed books, so I'm embarrassed. But what I would first ask, let me ask you a personal question. After I make friends, I chuckle a little bit, use some American humor. So let me ask you a personal question. Which do you like better, pleasure or pain? The guy look at me like I'm kind of crazy, and he look at his wife maybe a little lustfully. He said, well, pleasure, of course. Ma'am? Then I'd say, ma'am, you married the right guy here. Okay, then I said, this book will tell you, will enable you to achieve the highest possible level of pleasure available to a human being. And then I say to the guy, does it sound okay? He said, yeah. So, okay, so take it with you. You gotta do me, you gotta promise me one thing. Whatever you do, don't stay up all night long reading the book. Okay, can you promise me that? The guy say, yeah. Because look, I don't want your wife coming back mad at me tomorrow for keeping you guys awake all night long. Okay. So, it's like pretty much an 85, 90% sale rate on the books. But for those that didn't get the book, then I would say, well, maybe you don't like to read so much. I said, but do you like to eat? Okay. And they say, yeah. Well, here, take this with you. And I give them a higher taste. And I say, get your wife to cook you the Neapolitan cheesecake on page 92. Guarantee it'll knock the socks off your feet. Okay. And they start laughing. They, give me a couple dollars or something like that. But at that time, there was a magazine called Vegetarian Times. And it was kind of the magazine for the vegetarian movement in America. This was kind of pre-vegan. And the Vegetarian Times, there was a huge increase in vegetarianism. And guess what? They attributed the increase to the Hare Krishna movement with their vegetarian restaurants and their Sunday feast programs. They gave credit to the movement for doing this. And so there has been an impact, more and more so. In India, it's mind-blowing. How many people have taken up Krishna consciousness? How the prime minister, he's friends with the devotees. He sends messages to them, wishing them well on Janmashtami. And I had a friend I was working with, it's the Krishnavanti schools in England. And he connected with the prime minister, and they had a long discussion, and the prime minister wanted him to reorganize the educational system in India, because the British had come in, and it wasn't, they were mainly trying to get, the British had money in mind, so they were trying to organize the educational system so they'd have people to do what they told them to do. It wasn't something that was designed to produce thoughtful, creative persons. Anyway, it didn't happen. This devotee didn't want to come to India because it was all going to be a profit. He wanted to do it more on the business modality. So at any rate, so there is the potential of tremendous paradigm shifts taking place. But it's, right now, Kali Yuga is so strong. The irreligious activities are so powerful in the world. So here's some subsequent understandings that are coming from this 5th chapter of the 11th canto. This is verse 36. Those who are actually advanced in knowledge are able to appreciate the essential value of this age of Kali. Such enlightened persons worship Kali Yuga because in this fallen age, all perfection of life can easily be achieved by the performance of Sankirtan. Proof. Quite an interesting angle of vision. Okay, then it goes on to say, it is stated here that among the 4 ages, Satya, Treta, Dwarpa, and Kali, Kali Yuga is actually the best because in this age, the Lord mercifully distributes the highest perfection of consciousness, namely Krishna consciousness, very freely. Okay, so then we move on to text 37, and it gets even more into glorifying what takes place in Kali Yuga, what can take place. We're on 37. Indeed, there's no higher gain. I'm reading from notes on my screen. But this is good for everybody else. And I'm going to skip a little bit through the purport, just some bullet points. Indeed, there's no higher possible gain for embodied souls forced to wander throughout the material world than the Supreme Lord's Sankirtan movement, by which one can attain the supreme peace and free oneself from the cycle of repeated birth and death. Okay, so Krishna by nature, he's merciful. He's especially merciful to those in a helpless condition and who take complete shelter of his lotus feet. And one can do that by chanting his holy names. Okay, so here's from the previous Acharya, Sridhar Swami. He says, even in previous ages, such as Satya Yuga, it was not possible for the living entity to achieve the perfection that is available in Kali Yuga. Interesting. So Jiva Goswami expands on this. He says that in former ages, such as Satya Yuga, human beings were perfectly qualified and easily performed even the most difficult spiritual process, meditating for many thousands of years without eating or sleeping. But although in any age one can completely take shelter, the Lord's holy name gets all perfection. But in Satya Yuga, people are so qualified, they don't consider that merely moving the tongue and lips and chanting the holy name, it's a complete process. The Lord's holy name is the only shelter within the universe. They don't quite get that. They'd rather sit and do their Astanga yoga and meditate upon super soul in their heart. So also in Satya Yuga, sinful life is unheard of. So therefore, people aren't afflicted with the terrible reactions like the Ukrainian-Russian war, heavy duty, like the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a Kali Yuga special. So even though in Satya Yuga people worship the personality of God as the ultimate goal of life, and they follow the laws of Dharma, they don't feel themselves in a helpless condition. And thus they're not always experiencing intense love for the Lord. So they're not crying from the core of their heart, Krishna, please help me. Let me take shelter of you. I don't want to be under the external energy anymore. I'm sick and tired of serving Maya. Let me be your servant. So we see, that this process that Srila Prabhupada so lovingly and mercifully given us is just, as he says, the express elevator. So the helpless and pathetic conditions that the living entities in Kali Yuga have is a great impetus to surrender fully to the holy name of Krishna. And therefore, it's the best of ages. Okay, because here the condition shows we become disgusted with this kingdom of illusion, mind, because it's just so crazy. And they say fully surrender the holy name. And they achieve paramam shantam, supreme peace. So, and then text 38, the inhabitants of Satya Yuga, they're actually eager. They eagerly desire to take birth in the age of Kali. Interesting, huh? Since there'd be so many devotees of the Supreme Lord. So the inhabitants of Satya Yuga, they're aware of the conditions of Kali Yuga. They know that in Kali Yuga, the difficult material conditions forces the divinity to take complete shelter of the personality of Godhead. And that the inhabitants of Kali Yuga therefore develop a high degree of love of God. So although they're less sinful and they're truthful, self-controlled than the people of other ages, they still desire to take birth in Kali Yuga in order to taste pure love of Krishna. Okay, so pretty interesting angle. Now, one would say, what are you bringing all this up for, Janmashtami? But, it's just, this is something that's really practical for us. We were moving more and more in this direction of 50%. Our devotees are more and more surrendered. And I see so many wealthy devotees that are giving enormous sums of money to push the movement on. And they're just coming and dedicating their lives to pushing the movement on. Like Krishna Subhadra is a university professor down in South India. And he's come here and he's teaching in the Shimayapur International School, just surrendering, because he's got 2 daughters. He wants to give them a life in Krishna consciousness and the holy Dham. So let's stop here. And are there any questions, comments, maybe even some chastisements? Just give me your mercy.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Prabhuji, for such a wonderful class. So many different angles to look at the personality of Kali in this age of Kali. Some aspect indicates craziness, some aspect indicates ultimate bliss. And we just can't thank you enough. And some devotees may not know much about you, but Prabhuji has been a book distributor for so many years, and eventually chose to settle in Mayapur with his family. And lots of us have been benefiting from the Mayapur Institute of Education. He's one of the founding fathers. And now lots of us are benefiting from this amazing institution, where even though the books are there, but the way to approach and understand and apply is not always readily known to devotees, but this particular institution is making that possible. So Prabhuji, we thank you a lot for all the sacrifices and the services you've performed and continue to perform. So on this note, devotees, if you have questions, realizations, comments, you are free to do that. Even though Prabhuji had also mentioned chastisement, but we all know that is not allowed. So, Hare Krishna. Ganga Prasad Prabhu, please unmute. Hare Krishna. Good to see you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, JANMASTAMI Prabhu.
Okay, let's see. All right.
That's Ganga Prasad.
Oh, Ganga Prasad. Okay,
Yeah.
let's hear. Got a question?
I just wanted to compliment the class and appreciate you for all your support during my travel with my health in India. And then the support you gave me for assessing the training in my institute. Thank you very much.
I hope your health is better.
I'm
I tell
stable.
you, the thing is, even with these health crises, I'm having lunch tomorrow with a devotee that I used to distribute books with in America. And he's for the last 10 years, he's had Parkinson's disease. And, I hadn't seen him in 10 years. I directed him to some healthcare practitioners in America who were talking, and he's shaking like anything. But I said, well, this is actually Krishna's mercy. It's enabling you to take really deep shelter in him. It's out of his love that he's allowing you to do it. And actually, Giriraj Swami, he talked about this relationship between that Krishna has with his devotees. And Krishna takes charge of one's sinful reactions and uses it to help the devotee. I've seen this in my own life, that oftentimes when I go through the most difficult periods, it's when I feel like I'm making the most progress. And sometimes it's actually when I feel like when I'm experiencing the highest taste too, because I'm forced to take shelter, by the challenges that are coming my way. So I'm glad that things have stabilized, and but that's just Krishna, that's the way he works. He'll put us through the ringer, and then we come out, and then we're much stronger and more qualified to proceed with our devotional service to him. I mean, ultimately, I went to this doctor. He actually cared for my I have my Sankirtan partner for 18 years, had terminal cancer, and I brought him to Mayapur. He went to the Tata Memorial Cancer Hospital in Mumbai, and the kind of cancer he had wasn't treatable from an allopathic standpoint. So there's this one doctor in Calcutta that he was famous for turning around terminal cancer cases. Actually, the National Institute of Homeopathy in Calcutta built a whole wing of the hospital just to facilitate his expertise. And so he was caring for him. My friend eventually left his body, but it was like such a amazingly miraculous event. It's like that we had it took place in the first Mayapur Institute classroom, which was my first living room. We had like 80 devotees in a 16 by 20 foot room. These like BBT plates fixed on the wall, of Krishna's pastimes, and just like remarkable. Actually, Giriraj Swami, he asked me to tell the story of Nirguna's departure at the opening of the hospice in Vrindavan, and I did. I won't go into all the details of that, but and then about a year later, he sent me a transcription of what I said, and then they published that in his book, Life's Final Exam: Death and Dying from a Vedic Perspective. And but Nirguna wasn't a sad event. It was incredibly blissful because there was no question in anyone's mind that he went back to the spiritual world at the end. Krishna came to him in a dream, or in a vision, and he got an understanding that he was a manjari in Krishna's pastimes. And this, you can go on dandavat.com and just search Nirguna. And there's all kinds of articles that Harisari wrote, because Harisari didn't know him beforehand, but Harisari would come over. I'll go backtrack a little bit. I actually, when Nirguna came, it didn't seem so bad. We had a small care team, but then it got, his condition worsened. So I called Radhanath Swami and I said, could you send 10 brahmacharis to help take care of him? And also send this devotee that was in training in palliative care, a doctor. Palliative care is like taking care of people at the end of their lives. And so Radhanath Swami said to me, Janmashtami, no, what you should do is you should organize a community to help Nirguna. And it will be better for Nirguna and it will be better for the community. Both will benefit tremendously. So I went on the biggest marathon I've ever been on in my entire life. And kind of everyone knows my name is actually Janmashtami Marathon Das, because I did so many book distribution marathons. And, right from the very beginning of my devotional career. And so we had, and then he had what was called spindle cell sarcoma. And it was a huge tumor that enveloped his bronchial tube, his aorta, and his spinal column. And at one point, the cancer went into his spinal column and he became paralyzed from the waist down. And with the paralysis came excruciating pain. But we discovered that if he got vigorous foot and leg massages, the pain would subside substantially. And Nirguna wanted to stay Krishna conscious. He just didn't want to be drugged with barbiturates. So I organized a team of 34 devotees, 24/7. And it wasn't just light massage; it was like heavy duty. And even in his sleep, he had to be massaged. Otherwise, he would wake up and he'd be in excruciating pain. And it would take hours for that pain to subside. So he got, devotees got to massage his feet and his legs, and he developed all these relationships with the devotees. Then we had, senior care team, like Pankaj Jangri and Janani Vas would come, spiritual caregivers, Harisari. There was let's see, what's that sannyasi's name? Bhakti Madhava. Bhakti Madhava, I can't think of his full name now. Used to be, anyway, senior moment. Happens when you get to be 73. And then we had all the Gurukul boys. We had about like 30 boys coming every night and doing kirtan. After school, they'd come. And then we'd have like 25, 30 girls coming doing the same thing. Then we'd have community members coming. And towards the end, the first picture that Nirguna was a pre-medical student at university, but he just left it all and joined the movement. Super enthusiastic devotee. And the first, he got a BTG, and there was a picture of Giriraj lifting Govardhan Hill. And so he was very attached to Govardhan, Giriraj. So they put, there was this caretaker, one of the first, Ramadevi. She's like a midwife and a nurse, and she was in the first caretaking team. So she had a Giriraj, and it was always by Nirguna's bedside. That Harisari actually, towards the end, put it on his chest, so his big eyes were, just eye to eye, Giriraj and Nirguna. And then he put it in his hand. Okay, so then one night, Grihila Prabhu, he was an indexer for the BBT, and he was massaging Nirguna's feet. And I got Jayapataka Swami on the phone, and I would do that. The senior devotees, I'd connect with Nirguna. And he was in Los Angeles, and Nirguna was served under him as a temple president at the Tennessee Farm. He was a Sankirtan leader in Atlanta. That's when I got to know him. I came there as like the national Sankirtan leader to help get book distribution revved up. And then I told Nirguna, Jayapataka Swami will be ready to talk with you in 5 minutes. This was in the evening. Everyone had left. And Nirguna, he kind of gave me body language that he didn't want to talk to him. So it's, and then I went to Grihila and said, what's going on with Nirguna? I said, Janmashtami, I don't know, but I think he's about ready to leave his body. So I woke up the doctor, and he went, took his pulse, blood pressure, and said, yeah, he's only got a few hours left. Negligible blood pressure and pulse. So I called everybody back. We went into an all-night kirtan. And, I took a little rest because I had to deal with the government officials the next day in terms of getting permission for cremation, etc. So then we had this kirtan. He was good friends with Kurma, the cook. And they were they were on the Polish tour together. They were roommates. So Kurma was known as a cook, but what a kirtaniya. He was all night long just putting people in ecstasy. And then in the morning, there was another devotee who was a kirtaniya he was from British Columbia, Canada. And he was leading the kirtan. This was probably around 10:30 or so. And then all of a sudden, Bhakti Vishwambar Madhava Swami, that's who it was. He was sitting right next to me. The room was crowded, 80 devotees in the room. It was around 11 o'clock in the morning. And then all of a sudden, Bhakti Vishwambar Madhava Swami grabs my thigh and he says, Janmashtami, look. Nirguna, because, he'd been unconscious. The doctor said he's just not going to get out of it. He's going to leave his body. So Bhakti Vishwambar Madhava Swami said, look, Nirguna, his lips are moving. He's singing along with a kirtan. I look over, yeah. And not only that, but then he opened his eyes and he had this like incredibly blissful look on his face. And then he raises his arms up and starts chanting along with a kirtan. Like defying medical science completely, just completely on the transcendental platform. And then, all along, Harisari and him had been having discussions because he was waiting for his invitation to go back to the spiritual world. This was what came in the vision. So then all of a sudden, now Nirguna was a small-bodied person. He weighed probably like maybe 40 kgs. It was like about half my size. But because of the tumor, he couldn't eat anything for the last month. So he got down, so he was like probably 20 kgs.
Oh.
His thigh was the size of my wrist, and you had to put your ear right on his mouth in order to hear him. He could only speak in he was so weak. And so then in the middle of this tumultuous kirtan, Harisari Prabhu heard him say, "Get your piece and go." And Harisari couldn't figure out what was in Nirguna. Did someone say something to you? And you're going to say yes. Somehow that prompted Harisari to think in this way. So then Harisari said, who? So Giriraj. So Giriraj told you to get your peace and go. What do you mean by peace? Because he was thinking, peace of mind or something like that. And then Nirguna said, Giriraj. So Giriraj told you to take him and go. Am I right? And Nirguna said, yeah. Smiling so blissfully. So, and then Harisari said, Nirguna Prabhu, did you get your invitation? And he said, yes. So shortly after that short conversation, Nirguna again went into before that, actually, before he went unconscious, I called up Radhanath Swami because he had been so helpful in organizing, inspiring me to organize the community to serve Nirguna. It was like a modern day passing of Bhishma Dev. It was like amazing. There was all these devotees and so many senior devotees that were there. And, and so I got Radhanath Swami on the phone. Actually, Radhanath Swami was going to be coming to Mayapur. There was going to be a big Chopadi Yatra, like 4,000 or 5,000 devotees coming. And so I give the phone I put the phone on Nirguna's ear, old, not a smartphone, old mobile phone. And Radhanath Swami's, I wanted him to just give association to Nirguna in his last hours. And, after a while, because in those days, there were a lot of times the internet connections would drop, phone signal would drop. So I picked the phone up and said, are you still there, Maharaj? He said, yeah, but JANMASTAMI, I got to go. I'm going to miss my flight. So, I said, okay. So he comes along, but then, probably like another hour or so, Nirguna Prabhu left his body. It's like at 1:22 p.m. And, interesting, miraculous event took place then. Okay, so then there was one devotee from the Goshal that was in charge of like cremations. He knew all the samskaras and whatever the rituals that one would go through. So he asked us to have everybody get out of their room, except for a few devotees. And we took Nirguna's clothes off. But interestingly enough, we couldn't find Giriraj. Just somehow he got misplaced or something. So we took his clothes off, put new fresh clothes on, invited everybody back into the room. And then I offered artik to his body. And as I was offering artik, tears were streaming down my cheeks, but they weren't. I wasn't sad. I was in complete bliss, that my friend had gotten his invitation. He was going back to the spiritual world. So after doing the artik, we took him, kind of on a stretcher, palanquin, 3 times around the samadhi. It was still a little bit flood water, so we had to take a boat to the burning ghat. We went on to the burning ghat. And it's just so blissful, and then, I said it, because I was his close friend, the devotee had me light the fire. And then as the fire was burning his body, his arm fell off. So this devotee from the Gosha picked his arm up, tossed it back onto the fire like it was a log. It was really far out. But anyway, finally his body had turned to ashes, and he had me take a garden hoe and rake, pull the ashes into the Ganga, and that was the end of it. But I was so blissed out, and then they had saved prasadam for all the devotees at the Gata kitchen. So I went there. I'd slept maybe 2 hours in the last 48 hours, but I was just completely blissed out. And then the next day, all the devotees came for the Chopati Yatra, all these senior devotees. And we had this was before the Yatra actually began, and then we had a memorial service for Nirguna up in the Panchatattva extension, where the English Bhagavatam classes are. It was like so amazing, everything was what the devotees were saying. And then the next day, the Pandal started. They have the Anadan, free prasadam facility there, and that used to be on TOVP campus or TOVP construction site. And that was where the, Giriraj Swami gave the first Bhagavatam class. So I went up because I was so close in heart with Giriraj Swami, transformed my life. I attended the VIHE in '89. This is what gave me the inspiration to start the Mayapur Institute. Completely transformed my life. Giriraj Swami was given basically a nectar devotion course. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu verses in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Burijan gave a Gita overview. Tamal Krishna Maharaj gave a Brahma Samhita course. Satyarup Maharaj appreciation of Prabhupada. But just amazing experience for me. And so I went up to Giriraj Swami and told him about the miracles of Nirguna's departure. Oh, I'll tell, there's one more miracle I'll tell about. So I told him the story, and he just had bypass surgery like a year or so before, and he gave an hour-and-a-half class, and then we spoke for 45 minutes after the class. And that's when he asked me, like a year later, he sent me a transcript, wanted to put it in his book. No. Actually, then I went to meet Bhakti Brihat Bhagavat Swami from South Africa. He was at the opening of the hospice, and he wanted me to come there and meet him. I came in the room, and then Giriraj Swami signaled me to come over and talk with him. And he said he wanted me to tell the story of Nirguna's departure. So I went up to the devotee that was emceeing. He's one of the leaders at the Bhaktivedanta Hospital. Can't think of his name now. But and he said, how much time I got? He said, well, about 5 minutes. So I got up there and started talking. And I just was coming out of my heart, it's just like so amazing what had taken place. And then I sat down. I was really connected with the audience. I could feel that they just were there, with this whole departure episode. And then I sat down and I thought to myself, oh God, I think I spoke longer than 5 minutes. So then I went up to this devotee that was MC and I said, Prabhu, I'm really sorry. I think I spoke a little bit longer than 5 minutes. He said, Janmashtami, Prabhu, you spoke for 25 minutes. And I said, I'm sorry, Prabhu. He said, that's okay. Yesterday was Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, today's Raganuga Bhakti. Because the day before they had all the government VIPs and the big donors come. And actually, Giriraj Swami was the biggest donor for the whole thing. And but anyway, then that was transcribed and put in his book. But it just such an amazing experience. And we're all going to die. This doctor that took care of Nirguna, I recently went to see him, and he quoted, I think it's Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 22nd verse, Vashamshi Jirnani Vitaya. Shamshi Jirnani Ata Vihaya, Nivani Gurnanti Naroparani, Tata Sharirani Vihaya Jirnani, Anyani Samyati Navani Dehi. As a person gives up old and worn garments and discards them and accepts new garments, similarly, the soul discards old and worn out bodies. After he saw my reports from the CT scan on my abdomen and everything that's wrong with me, he said, Janmashtami, we're all going to leave our bodies. So, but the point is that in Krishna consciousness, when we leave our bodies, it's not a hellish experience like it is for the non-devotees. They just fear it, it's just crazy. They're they got all their makeup on so they don't look like they're dead. That's what the funeral parlors do. But you know, it's like it's a remarkable experience, you know. And Gary Raj Swami told me that what happened when Nirguna isn't unusual. He's known many examples like that of miraculous occurrences. And okay, just one last point on the miracle with Nirguna's departure is that 4 or 5 days later, a Mataji that lived next door came to my house and said to my wife, I have a Govardhan Shila on my altar and I don't know where it came from. Guess what? That was the Govardhan Shila that was on Nirguna's chest. Okay, so it had gone, taken Nirguna back, and then it returned to my Okay, I see a few hands up. Maybe their hands are going to slap me. Janmashtami, you're talking too long.
No, Prabhuji. We are just enjoying the nectar coming out of your lotus mouth. Thank you so much for those sharings. So, Mitravinda Devi, you may unmute, please.
Someone's got to unmute.
Yeah, Mitra, are you still there? All right, we go to Kavikanapu Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
Yes, Hare Krishna, JANMASTAMI Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Okay. I don't see. Okay, there you are. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, so I'm very inspired with the story. I remember I was there in the Mayapur Institute when this happened. Niruguna Prabhu, I was in the room when he left his body.
It was true, right? Everything I said was like amazing.
Yes, Prabhu. And this is the first time I'm hearing the full story of his experience. I'm really inspired, you know, very wonderful. Thank you very much, Prabhu, for sharing it.
Well, go to dandavat.com and search Nirguna, and you'll see article after article about it. You know, Harisari did a really good job. Harisari is a good writer, as we know, but it's incredible what took place. But just being there, you know, how that room was just completely overloaded with ecstasy, wasn't it? It was amazing.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, I was there. Our devotees were there chanting. Yes. Oh, yes, Prabhu.
Incredible. All right. Well, thanks for sharing, Prabhu. Mitravendra. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Mitravinda Devi, are you still there? You may unmute, please. All right, before she comes in to ask her question or make her comment, Prabhuji, I have a question, and that is obviously, we all know and understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if one wants to serve God, he is the one needs to serve. That is God. But it is quite bewildering, at least at my level. It's quite bewildering to me how and why Krishna would, I wouldn't say enjoy it, but why Krishna allows his devotees to go through so much suffering. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He can do and undo anything and everything. But look at, like you were talking about, His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj, what he's been through, and even Srila Prabhupada himself on the boat of Jaladuta coming to US, what he went through. When he came to US, he was distributing books. He fainted on the street, and Krishna was there, seeing all these things. And again, Krishna himself again states in, I think, 1088:8.
Yeah.
That's when he becomes very favorable. He takes away everything.
Dashahamanuganami Harisheta Danam Shanai.
So, I mean, I hope when Krishna does that, when Krishna does take away one's wealth because he's become favorable to such a person, Krishna also sees to it that that person does not bloop, because there are certain situations that when a devotee finds himself in may make him bloop. I want you to shed a little bit light on that, why Krishna allows his devotees to go through so much suffering from time to time.
Well, that's what the Bhagavad Gita is all about. You know, here Krishna wants Arjuna to kill his grandfather, to kill his teacher, Dronacharya, Bhishma Dev. A pretty awkward situation to be in. You know, like Arjuna's got some really good arguments of why he shouldn't fight. But then he finally realizes that actually the best thing, because superior to all my arguments, is that this is what Krishna wants to do. And he wanted to do that to, you know, clear off, you know, one, to bring all of his entourage back to the spiritual world, but also clear off the demoniac elements that had come in. You know, Dhritarashtra's sons, you know, Duryodhana and 100 sons, all these crazy things that are going on, and all the difficulties that the Pandavas went through. And Queen Kunti, you know, she had quite an enlightened attitude. Vipada Shantata Shashvat, Chatra Chatra Jagadguru, Bhavato Darshanam Yacha, Apana Bhava Darshanam. May all those calamities happen again and again, Krishna. And I mean, just one thing after another that was going on. May those calamities happen again and again, because when they happen, then we see you. And when we see you, we no longer see repeated birth and death. So the point that my understanding, you know, it's not like I haven't been through a lot, you know, in my life and continue to go through. You know, I got cheated for over $100,000 by a so-called solid devotee that left the movement with my money. And he changed his name, and, you know, I got, you know, it'll all work out in the wash. But, you know, so many challenges. But what I've found, 10:14:8, this is the Mahavakyam, which is kind of the most potent verse that helps devotees process distress and stay in enlivened, blissful Krishna consciousness. Tatenu kampam sukshamikshamano bunjani vatmakritam vipakam ridvag vapabir vidadan namaste jiveta yo mukti pade sadayabak. And if you haven't already learned it, learn it, please. I mean, it's just amazing, the experiences I've had with that verse and what the commentaries of the acharyas that are included in the purport. This is the first chapter after Prabhupada left, because he finished with 13. But it'll answer your question and just live it, you know, go deep in the heart. Vyasaki Prabhu, the famous Kirtaniya from America, he lives in Vrindavan now. You know, of course, after Prabhupada left, there was a pretty large exodus of devotees. You know, some of it, you know, could be attributed to immature management or harsh dealings and lack of maturity on those that left and the way they were dealt with, blah, blah, blah. But he found a common denominator with all the devotees. He dealt with over 500 devotees. His mood was to kind of reignite their love for Srila Prabhupada and their commitment to Prabhupada. The common denominator he found in every single one of them was that somehow or other, they couldn't apply the aspect of the philosophy that's presented in 10:14:8. So you're right, people blew. So the point is, we should prepare ourselves for these Maha tests that come, and they come. You know, I know that I'd been a devotee, 5 years. I came to Mayapur the first time, and I had my first Maha test here on Gaur Purnima. I was thinking, God, do I really want to be part of this movement? You know, I was so disturbed. But when I got back to America, there was a sannyasi, not active anymore, but he advised me to learn this verse, and I did. And it's kind of become my shastric jewel that I carry with me, and I can go through thick and thin with it. I had an experience, shortly after I learned it, I went to Vrindavan. This was probably in 83 or 84. This is pre-water day, pre-bottled water days, where bottled water wasn't a common thing. And Vrindavan, they said, just go to that pump in that faucet in the Gurukul, and the water is pretty good. And so I went, anyway, I ended up with like very, very severe blood dysentery, where I would have, and I took Hansarupa, he was my assistant bhakti leader when I joined the movement in 77. And he was in charge of building Prabhupada's Samadhi in Vrindavan. And I just took shelter of him, and he advised me to go the Ayurvedic route. And so I was taking Ayurvedic medicine, but I was spending about 40%. I'm going to be very blunt about this and graphic. I was spending about 40% of my waking hours on the toilet, squatting on the toilet in the guest house of the temple. And and then I had excruciatingly painful cramps, probably fairly comparable to what a woman goes through in child labor. So it was just so intense, and I couldn't eat anything, I was losing, I lost like something like 35 pounds in 2.5 weeks. And when I got back to America, people didn't recognize me. I looked like a skin and bones. But as I was undergoing these intense cramps, an incredibly disgusting situation, passing diarrhea and blood, I would recite this mantra, this sloka, Tateno Kampam Sukshamikshamano. And guess what? I felt incredibly blissful. I felt Krishna's presence in my life in a very powerful way. So it was kind of an introduction. A lot of the purification that we go through, a lot of the distresses we go through are on a subtle platform. There's one verse, I got it written down in my shloka book. I don't have it right in my head, but the process of devotional service dissolves the subtle body, which means a false ego gets dissipated. So a lot of the most challenging things that we go through as devotees is to reject, where our egos hurt. But, it's just kind of what goes with the process. Like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say, that the path of a Vaishnava is filled with many thorns. That's what I found. But with the thorns, there's also some incredible levels of bliss.
Hey.
How'd I do? Did it was it satisfactory?
Yes. It is. It is very satisfactory, but it's still. I guess that when Krishna puts or allows a devotee to go through such hard times, he also helps the devotee withstand it and
go deeper in his relationship with Krishna.
Yes, and not lose his faith, because at a very preliminary stage of devotional service, where one's faith is not very strong, when one goes through situations like that, it's kind of very easy for such a person to abandon Krishna. He says, I don't know whether this God actually works. So it's the Supreme Lord himself. No.
Well, therefore, enroll in Bhakti Shastri ASAP and learn 10-14-8 ASAP and print it in your heart and just live it. Live the life of Bhakti. Apply it. Know that the tests are going to come. It's Kali Yuga. Yeah. We weren't saints before we joined. I mean, God, when I look at my hippie life before I joined the movement, like, incredible. Yeah. The transformation Krishna put me through, like a miraculous.
So, Srimad Varaha Prabhu, please, you may unmute. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhu, and my obeisances to everybody. All glories to Prabhupada. Thank you very much for this very enlightening class. In fact, I have one question which I'm wondering whether I should ask or not, because
Go ahead. Don't worry.
no, your lecture is so transcendental, so sublime that it kind of overrides this question, because the question is social, very on the social aspect. The second question is follow up of what Sahadev Prabhu just asked. But anyway, I'll try to put the two across and you do justice to them. The first question is about using gold in Krishna consciousness and bringing him money, and if there are saintly leaders, they can use it properly. And we have seen that many other groups, spiritual, so-called pseudo-spiritual groups that form communities also encourage their followers to come and surrender whatever they collected. And there had been stories of so many of those who end up to be very fraudulent. And it's kind of, the followers are being abused, used, and they still remain in ignorance, even though sometimes the leaders are arrested and prosecuted. But then they got hooked to this idea of, working for the community and surrendering all the money and not owning anything. And gradually it's coming true, like, people have been brainwashed, So why I'm asking this question is because, and you being a very old Sankirtan devotee, your answer to this question will be very satisfactory, I think. In ISKCON, we have devotees going out to collect money, especially brahmacharis, and they do this for years. And then afterwards, many things happen. Many are not very happy with how they use their youth collecting money for ISKCON and so on and so forth. So since you've been able to go through all these different stages, how would you try to reconcile the fact that working and bringing the gold for the community, and it's not being seen, it's not going to be seen like people are being exploited? That is the first part of the question. And then this, maybe you should answer that first, then I can come with the second letter.
So there's a sense of exploitation,
right?
Like new devotees are coming, and yeah, I felt that way. I love doing book distribution, but when the movement went through a major change after Prabhupada left, when Prabhupada was president in America, the temples were supported by book distribution. There wasn't any congregational development. There wasn't funding coming from the community. It was all book distribution. And then when he left, a lot of devotees left. So the numbers went down, but these huge buildings were still there. So a lot of devotees were being asked to sell paraphernalia, non-devotional, basically be businessmen. And here I was, a brahmachari who loved book distribution and did well with book distribution. I was being asked to sell non-devotional Korean oil paintings door to door. I wore a three-piece suit. I had a wig, blonde wig. I had a 6'7" assistant that would hold paintings up on the wall. I go to multi-million-dollar homes in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. I paid $700 a month, and this is pre-internet days, and Yellow Page advertising. I had the largest Yellow Page advertisements in the Yellow Pages, the phone book Yellow Pages, for the 2 of the top 10 wealthiest counties in North America. And I would have $15,000, $20,000 sales. And it wasn't the life of I'd have sometimes, I'd be selling and there'd be a woman and she'd try to seduce me. Okay, it wasn't a supportive to brahmacharya at all. So I kind of went through a personal, and then there was recognition of the leadership in the zone that I was serving, and it's not really an appropriate service for devotees. And there was a married woman that wanted to marry me, It was crazy, you know. So the Ravindra Sarup, he was the chairman of the zonal committee. He advised me just leave the zone. So I went to the West Coast with another devotee. I was shifting, you know, between ashrams, and we would stay up late at night analyzing what's going on in our movement. And we came to the conclusion that there was a major deviation that had taken place. Rather than the temples being basis for book distribution, it become basis for business, for book distribution, preaching, and sadhana. Devotees were being sent out all by themselves with no association to operate kiosks. That's like in a mall, you know, they have it in the center of the mall hallway to sell oil paintings. And many would fall down, you know, because they didn't have the spiritual strength to, you know, I was a survivor, but it wasn't proper. So what I did about it, okay, there was a shortcoming in our movement. Rather than, look at that shortcoming, I don't want anything to do with a Hare Krishna movement, I decided I'm going to do something about it. So then I became a national Sankirtan leader, you know, gradually built up, and we moved from 3 full-time book distributors in 1987 to 85 in 92. And we were number 2 in the world. I think this is when they were doing really big in Rohini Sutta was, Switzerland, you know. And they had huge results there. So, you know, that's the thing, you know, find the fault and then do something about it if you can. That's the formula I used. And same thing when I came to Mayapur. There was a lot of problems, you know, like on a racial platform, you know, between the Westerners and the Bengalis. And in starting the Mayapur Institute, one of the main motivations for starting the Mayapur Institute was to provide a transitory, you know, something after the kids finished their high school in the Gurukul. So they got some adult education. So that was there. But also I knew that it helped me tremendously with my service, with my Krishna consciousness. I went to the VI chief for the first time in '89. And I went every year, sometimes twice a year, and took courses for a month. And, you know, this, I just was a big part of my life. And, you know, I wanted to let others experience that same satisfaction of deeply studying Prabhupada's books in the association of the devotees. So anyway, you know, that's I think the best thing to do with it when you see a shortcoming in the movement. Try to do something in a positive, productive way to resolve it. You know, I tolerated it. And I went ahead and I did the service that I was asked to do. But then when it kind of crashed, I replaced it with a better service. Like the New York Temple in 1989, after my first time at the VIH, was ready to be closed for failure to pay the city taxes for sewage, electricity. And, you know, I came in there, I was asked, I had 30 new devotees, like about 20 men and 10 ladies. And I got Jadharani, she was one of the first devotees in the movement. She was a woman Sankirtan leader, I was a man. And we did something like $45,000 selling straight books in 10 days just before Christmas time in New York. Completely transformed the temple. You know, the North America, they hadn't seen anything like this in years, this kind of book distribution. We had parties in North Carolina and Washington, D.C., and the ladies worked in New York. And just huge. I was doing like $600-700 a day, you know, in the Charlotte, North Carolina airport. All these soldiers were coming back from the Gulf War. And just, it was amazing how many books we got out. Myself and another devotee were doing it. And then we had devotees working parking lots and malls and whatever. It was just huge. So that's the best thing. You know, see the shortcoming, do something about it. And then that's the way to please Krishna. And I felt, you know, like I did the best I could with that. You know, and it gave me a lot of spiritual strength in a difficult period of between ashrams. But I survived.
Yeah. Well, thank
Thank you.
Prabhu, if you may continue with the second one.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Prabhu. I like you speaking from experience. It's all very positive vibes, and so thank you very much for that. Then the second question is a bit related to the question asked by Sahadev Prabhu. Devotees, going through very, especially before leaving their body, so much, pain and suffering. But maybe it's not good to make comparisons, but we've read in all the spiritual, groups, the history of some spiritual groups in India, some part of the world, their leaders living, just going to the room and saying, I'm leaving you people, so farewell. And then he goes into the room and he goes, So we've seen some stories like that. Somehow we've not had any of our ISKCON leader living in that manner. Do we say, what do we say? How do we describe this? Because we feel that we are very much close to Krishna and we have high spiritual realization. But then when it comes to living the body, it's really sometimes very painful and sad, the way some of our leaders have left compared to what we read, in other spiritual groups, and their leaders, just walk into the room and say, okay, bye-bye, I'm leaving you. And then he smilingly, and he leaves the body. So why, I want to know, have we had such experience before in ISKCON, or why are we not having such experience if we don't? That's my question.
Well, there was an Ayurvedic doctor in Vrindavan he came in a family lineage. His father was an Ayurvedic doctor. His grandfather was. And his grandfather was, he told his family, I'm leaving my body today. So no one knew. He didn't have any disease. He just kind of had the mystic power of being able to do that. So there's some mystic powers that she was like, Bhishma Dev had that power, right? He had that mystic power of being able to choose the time of his departure, I think, right? Did I get that right?
Yes, Bhishma Dev.
Yeah. So you get someone like Jayapataka Swami, he just, he's had all these surgeries, all these physical challenges. He just went on a month tour of Bangladesh, and he initiated 7,000 devotees. So then stop him. He's in bliss. So the point is that we're not our bodies. That's a big factor. And, if you look at Matar Sparshas Tukantaya Shatoshna Shuka Dukada, that's 2:14 Gita. And the next verse says that one who tolerates these distresses is steady in both, is eligible for liberation. So the point is that we, Jayapataka Swami's up to, Prabhupada told him to initiate 50,000. Now he's up around 60. I think he's past 60,000. So the thing is that, my experience, like I had hip replacement surgery about 4.5 years ago. And they prescribed all these barbiturates for me after the surgery. I didn't use them. I didn't need them. I didn't feel any pain. And then they had a physical therapist come to my home and put me through different physical therapy to recover from the surgery. And this physical therapist had been a physical therapist for 35 years and had never seen a patient recover so quickly. So Krishna, I need a new hip, so it made it easy. And I don't even notice that I got a hip replaced. It's just a normal hip now. So, there are token reactions that Krishna gives his devotees. And if devotees practiced applying Tate Nukampam Shukshamikshamano in his life, he doesn't, he experiences bliss in spite of the challenging circumstances. Like Prabhupada was in bliss right at the very end. It didn't really bother him so much. And then he knew that if he had another heart attack, that he probably wouldn't live through it. And then Krishna came to him in his multi-armed form, rowing a boat or like that, it's like an incredible vision that took place. So it was like a transcendental experience for him. I mean, I don't see it as a cruelty. I just see it as, with Prabhupada, he's kind of set a standard of how we deal with distress in our lives. I see the same thing with Jayapataka Swami. So I just to follow in the footsteps of these exalted souls. And, these other Mayavadi, yogis, whatever, where do they go? How much progress do they make in their spiritual lives? Do they realize their relationship with Krishna? Do they enter into a deep, loving relationship with him? Probably not. And so, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, the path of a Vaishnava is filled with thorns. But, there's so much bliss there that you don't even feel the thorns. If you're strong in your sadhana practices and really try to apply the philosophy in your life. That's my understanding of how to deal with it. And that's what Nirguna did. I mean, that was a difficult circumstance he had. But Krishna made all the arrangement, to have all the devotees massaging his feet 24/7. He didn't have to go on barbiturates. He chanted 16 rounds right up to his last day. And he was in bliss. It was a bliss at the end. He came out of conscious, was unconscious. He became conscious, chanted along with the kirtan. Amazing. No one was sad. He was blissed out. He got what he wanted in life. He wanted to go back to the spiritual world, and he got the invitation to do that. So that's an example that we can follow. Just look, search Nirguna and Dandavats, and you'll see. Amazing. Anything else?
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji, and thank you, Vara Prabhu, with your questions. I'm trying to remind all of us that sometimes out of the unimaginable mercy of the spiritual master accepts us as disciples. But once we get accepted as disciples, our sinful actions get carried by the spiritual master. So if we truly and sincerely love our spiritual master, as most of us claim it to be, then I think it's very important that we pay close attention to whatever we do, because whatever we do, whatever we say, gets shared by the spiritual master. There is one correspondence Srila Prabhupada had in the very early days of ISKCON. I think it was 69 to Sachi Sutta, in which the Prabhupada was saying that, because Sachi Sutta Prabhu had written to Srila Prabhupada, expressing his appreciation for the love and the caring that Srila Prabhupada was giving them. And Srila Prabhupada wrote back saying that, what can he do? He is accepted to be the spiritual master. And sometimes as a spiritual master, you have to carry the sins of your disciples. So, Prabhu, I would like you to throw more light on this, because I'm thinking that if that is the case, then as disciples of the spiritual master, if we probably take very close caution of what we say or do, that might also go a long way of relieving our spiritual masters of some of the troubles they have to go through to help us go back to Godhead.
Yeah. I mean, we've definitely got to be sensitive to our Guru Maharaj. It may be, Jayapataka Swami's got many, many more disciples than any other ISKCON Guru. So that may be there, but He's not adversely affected in consciousness. He's very strong. His Krishna consciousness. It's a lot of challenges. He's had COVID 4 times because his immune system's weak. For the liver and kidney transplants, they had to reduce his immune system. That's my understanding. So that his body wouldn't reject the transplant. So, but it comes where devotees, they go through these episodes and they gain deep realization that they're not their bodies, which is kind of the qualification for advancing in bhakti. To understand that. It's what the whole much of the Gita is about, in the beginning. Sambandha Gyan, your spirit soul, you're not your body. And the relationship you have with the material energy, with Krishna. And what the material energy's relationship with Krishna. So the ideal, of course, is to have complete confidence that Krishna loves us and he wants us to come back to him. And I think it's important, that one major change that I've gone through in the last year is I started worshiping Gaura deities. I always had these heavy-duty leadership services where I didn't really have so much time for deity worship. At least that was my mindset. I didn't think it was so important. And but in doing the deity worship, my relationship with the deities has become very amazing. So it personalizes our relationship with Krishna. I think that's something, it's one of the Panchanga Bhaktis, to worship the deity. So I think that's something that can really help with that personal loving relationship with Krishna. It gives us more faith. Krishna's right there. We can feel his presence in the deity. And the deeper we go, another factor that I've found is the japa. Now, I'll hold this up. I've distributed 1,200 copies of this to devotees in the last, I don't know if you can see it, looks like it's upside down.
Yes, we can see it. Yes.
I've distributed 1,200 copies of this Japa Affirmations. It's written by Mahatma. It's a cream of like 18 years of Japa retreats with devotees like Giriraj Swami, Bibi Govinda Swami, Indradumna Swami, Satyananda Swami, Purijan Prabhu, written by Mahatma, who also was a facilitator in this. And Ajinkya Prabhu, he's a disciple. I saw his name up there. You're still there, Ajinkya?
Yes, he's still here.
Okay. And
Yes,
he helps organize the reprint. We just got it translated into Bengali. Sankirtan department wants to print 10,000 of these. Every day before I start my japa, I read one affirmation. It takes me 2 or 3 minutes, but it helps set the proper mood. Like Prabhupada describes chanting like the genuine child of a genuine cry of a child for his mother. And exactly what is encouraged here. Like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said that chanting Hare Krishna is not lip deep, it's heart deep. It's from the heart with deep feeling. Please, Krishna, I've been engaged in the material service to Maya for lifetimes. Please, now let me serve you. Let me serve under Srimati Radharani, under your internal energy. So I find that, these two things, these are changes I've gone through in my life and extremely helpful for having that personal loving relationship with Krishna, which can take us through the tough times. He's a person. He's there for us. He loves us. He's the biggest treasure, and his treasure is his holy name, because it allows us to develop our love for him. We can come to him, we can clean our hearts, free our consciousness from doubts. You know, I usually take rest at 7.
Yes, it's pretty late your time. We can't thank you enough. So I don't know. There is one hand up, but if it's too late, we can
Go
call
ahead.
it a night.
Hari Chakra, go ahead.
Yeah, Arichakra Prabhu. So this is the last question for the night, for the day, wherever you may be. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, thank you very much for this beautiful class and the explanation of the questions that have been thrown out. Mine is like a question and a comment at the same time about Vara Prabhu's the second part of Vara Prabhu's question. In Bhattacharya Maharaj's book about die before dying, he was trying to explain how the spiritual master teaches everything, gives you all the information about how to live whilst you are alive, to be qualified to go back home. And then he goes further to teach that he even goes to the extent of teaching how to leave the body. So that question that Vara Prabhu asked, could that mean that all these are exalted devotees in our movement who have been going through this intense hardships at the time of death? Could it be that Krishna is using them to teach us how to live our bodies? Because we as like deeply conditioned souls, sometimes when we go through such intense hardships, even at the time of living body, we might even be prompted to forget about Krishna because we will be more concentrating on our pains. So could it be that the spiritual masters are using this the platform of going through these intense situations to teach us how to even leave our body after they have?
That's my sense. You know, Krishna is making the arrangement. Like Prabhupada would say to his disciples towards the end, don't think this won't happen to you. So, you know, I mean, Daipadaka Swami is setting a sterling example. We're all going to die. And there's in the Mahabharata, there's this famous question that Yamaraj asked Yudhisthira, what is the most wonderful thing in this world? And Yudhisthira gave a really good answer. He said, Hani hani bhutani kachanti ya yamalayam shesha stavaram michanti kimascha yamata param. Every day, hundreds and thousands of living entities are going to the kingdom of death, but those who are remaining are making an arrangement for a permanent situation. In other words, they're thinking they're not going to die. So we're all going to die. Let's get ready for it. What's the whole Bhagavatam about? It's getting ready for death. Preparing yourself so that you're qualified to go to the spiritual world. So, you know, I'm, you know, and as my body ages, you know, I just turned 73. One thing after another is falling apart. You know, I'm much more conscious that I'm going to die. You know, and I've just got to get more and more serious about Krishna consciousness. But this is actually it's a benediction. The jara, you know, old age. And other devotees have said, because you become much more serious about your Krishna consciousness. Other senior devotees have said the same thing to me. So this is all the divine arrangement of the Lord. That we don't have to come back to the material world again. We go to the spiritual world. This is part of becoming qualified to go to the spiritual world. We go through these heavy tests, and you know, to detach us from the bodily platform.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. In fact, what you just did is a lot of sacrifice that you've taken, staying up this much late India time to speak to us. And thankfully, we've enjoyed your class so much. And we hope and pray that Guru Krishna give you all the strength, physically, spiritually, so that when we call upon you next time, we can again have your association once again. So at this point, we're humbly going to request the devotees here to kindly unmute, and then we chant Hare Krishna to express appreciation for Prabhu's presence here and the lectures. Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
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 Krishna, Krishna,
Hare
Hare,
Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Vanchakal,
Chakapatra Vacha, Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna. Jai.
All glories to His grace,
Janmashtami
Jai.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Looking forward to your Sangha again.